Hi guys. So you should by now have three different aims to choose from. So by now you should have three aims ready and you should have chosen one for now. This is actually a very difficult stage. So this aim is not necessarily the aim that you're going to stay with. So if you feel at any point between sessions and between submissions you want to change your aim, change it, but justify why you want to change it. Yeah, because the more you're going to be doing research, the more your aim will improve. Okay, so you had an area of interest, then you did some preliminary research. Forget about the primary and secondary research. I'll go into that next session or the one after that, we'll see. And then you did some evaluation and analysis with this information that you collected to create a problem or something that you want to look into, and that's your aim. So now you have to change your area of interest into an aim, or it's also a title. So the title should be the same as your aim. Same content, it's basically the same sentence, but the title is in a question form. So with an aim, you're saying, I want to evaluate the difference between this and this. Whereas with a title, it is, what is the difference between this method and that method? You're asking a question instead of saying, I want to find out if this is better than this. They both reflect the report. The title is usually in a question form, the aim is not. So here's an example from the exemplar. You can also see different exemplars. I think this is the guy who got an A or a B. This is Why Do Giant Pandas Eat Bamboo? But that's the title. The aim is I want to investigate into why pandas eat bamboo and what the future holds for the animal, both physically and politically. So the aim can be in more detail, but the title should be very clear. It shouldn't be pandas diet. That's not enough. It's very general. So I'll give you an example. Here I found this article. I'll get into more details on how you, like what the sort of type of sources that you need to look into later on. But this is an example of a reliable article. It's discussing the diagnosis of the coronavirus, COVID-19. Should you do the PCR or CT? So this is the title. The aim of this article, so someone wrote this article. Why did they write it? To find the diagnosis, the best diagnosis for the coronavirus. Is it CT or PCR? So you need to know now how to change your aim from the aim of what you want to write about into the title of the thing that you want to write about. So you need to now, whatever aim you have, change it into a title. I'll give you another example. What is the most energy efficient route for biogas utilization, heat, electricity, or transport? So your aim here was, I want to find the most energy efficient route for biogas utilization, if it's heat, electricity, or transport. So now you changed it into a question form. That's the title. So my aim last time was to determine if a thermal remediation method is more environmentally friendly in remediating lead from a contaminated land than a physical method. So what a title could sound like is, what is the most environmentally friendly remediation method in remediating lead from a contaminated land? Thermal or physical? Question mark. That's how you changed an aim from an aim into a title. So that's one of the things that you should do for next time is your chosen aim, change it into a title. Now, what's the next step? So now you know what you want to write about, and the end game is the report. But how do you go from aim to report? So the first step that you should do is break up the things that you need to do in order to reach your aim. So how, for example, for my aim, for this aim, so what are the things that I need to do in this report in order to answer this question that I just posed? So at the beginning of the report, I need to discuss what is a contaminated land. The first thing that I need to discuss is what is a contaminated land. And then what is lead and why is lead a contaminant? How does it contaminate the land? So description at the beginning of the report is just things that you're going to describe. So you can help reach the aim by breaking down this aim into simpler questions that you need to answer one by one in order to then answer the big question. So before finding out if thermal or physical is the better remediation method, know what it is that you're remediating You have to introduce that in the report, and then discuss this method, and then discuss this method. And then you'll know which one is better. So, what are the mini questions that you need to answer first? So, the second one could be, what are the thermal remediation methods? So, there could be more than one thermal remediation method. Let's say you picked one. So, what is it? Describe this thermal remediation method. Then you can say, what are the benefits and challenges in using this thermal remediation method? So, it could be expensive. It could be very fast. So to remediate the whole land, you'd need 2 days, but it's expensive, right? Then you need to discuss what are the different physical remediation methods. Or if it's a certain physical method, then you need to describe that physical method. Then you have to tell me the benefits and challenges in using this physical method. So, okay, maybe it's cheaper, but it takes longer. So you discuss all the advantages and disadvantages of both, and then you come up with a conclusion. So the final mini question that you need to answer is which one is better. But here, what we're discussing is which one is more environmentally friendly. So I specified it in my aim. So if environmentally friendly was too specific, you could remove that and be like, okay, which one is more efficient, or which one is the better method? When you say better, what do you mean by better? Do you mean more environmentally friendly? Do you mean more economic? Do you mean more faster, efficient? So there are more than different ways in comparing the physical method with the thermal method. So you need to know which one is better. So then, yeah, you do your research, you find out the difference between them, and then you know which one is better. This is just an example. Obviously, you need to do this with your own report, your own aim, whatever it is that you're evaluating. But these are the certain mini questions that you need to answer. So now, you know that aims are usually associated with objectives, right? This is what I'm trying to get at, is that you have an aim, you need objectives in order to reach that aim. Objectives are basically small commands to yourself of things that you need to do in order to reach your aim. So aim is what you plan on finding in doing this project. The objectives are the steps you need to do to reach that aim. So here you have, this person wanted to investigate why pandas eat bamboos and what the future holds for the animal, both physically and politically. So what did he need to do? He needed to research into the biology of pandas, research into comparisons with other bears, and research into bamboos. Now, these are very, very brief objectives, not that very strong because he's using the same verb in all three: research. Yeah, so for the A-star exemplar, he just kept them in a question form, but objectives are actually orders to yourself. So you should be using verbs and try to use strong verbs. I also have a list of strong versus weak verbs for objectives. So you have strong verbs: collect, construct, classify, develop, devise, measure, produce, revise, select, synthesize. Weak verbs are appreciate, consider, acquire, learn, know, understand, be aware of, appreciate, listen, perceive. So, example of objectives. I have examples from the contaminated land. So research contaminant X, or in our case, lead. List all the different remediation methods that could be used to remediate contaminant X. Devise the advantages and disadvantages of, that's one of the methods, ion exchange. And then devise advantages and disadvantages of incineration, another method that I kind of specified. And then determine which method is more optimal for a devised scenario. But it's basically you're breaking down the things that you need to do in order to actually answer your aim. That's what objectives are. Objectives are preferably should be SMART objectives. What is SMART objectives? So SMART objectives are specific. You're not being very general about what it is that you need to do. So about pandas, you're not just going to be like, oh, research about pandas. That's very general. So be specific on what it is that you need to do. Preferably, it should be measurable. So that's especially for later on when you actually need to do some work. So, for example, find out 2 main disadvantages from using thermal and 2 disadvantages of using a thermal remediation method. So that way, later on, you can go back and be like, I did find out three methods, three advantages and three disadvantages. So it's more measurable. So achievable. So say you want to find 10 advantages and 10 disadvantages. That might be too much, and you need to set something that you can do. Instead of just going overboard and setting a certain objective that's too difficult to achieve. And then you have realistic. So say you put in your objective that you wanted to find 50 advantages and 50 disadvantages. That's not realistic. You're not going to be able to do that. There might not be 50 advantages and disadvantages. It's not realistic. And then you also have time bound. So you have to have an objective that you can achieve in this time period that you have and the word count, instead of doing something that's, again, too much. It's kind of related to achievable as well. I don't want to see objectives that are too vague, where you're not really clear about what it is that you want to do. They should be concise, short sentences that you're commanding yourself to do. Preferably not in a question form. Objectives should be orders to yourself. Okay, so for example, with SMART objectives, you have get in shape and then lose 10 pounds. Which one is better? Obviously, when you say lose 10 pounds, you're being more specific. Get in shape is very vague and you can't really measure it. So by the end, do you know that you've achieved your objective or not? Because at the end, you need to look back on your objectives and be like, okay, you can tick them off. So getting in shape is very vague. How can you be sure that you got in shape? With the losing 10 pounds, you're being very specific and be like, okay, it's a number. You can go back and be like, okay, what was I before? What was I after? And then you can be like, okay, did you tick it or not? And then you have losing 10 pounds and losing 50 pounds. Which one is more achievable? So 50 pounds might be a bit too much, but also it's not specific. So we can go further into saying losing 50 pounds in 1 month and then losing 50 pounds in 2 years. 50 pounds in 1 month, both are specific, but 50 pounds in 1 month is unrealistic. So yeah, and then we have another thing is like, I'm going to study 6 hours a day. But then there's another one is like, I'm going to study a minimum of 2 hours a day in weekdays and maybe 4 in weekends. That's a bit more realistic. It's specific, it's measurable. But obviously you're not going to tell me that in your objectives. In your objectives, you'll be like, I'm going to find this. It's a bit better than. Okay, so that's what we're going to be doing today. So basically what you need to do next is add objectives. Is just break down your aims, pick one, and show me what your objectives are. You need to be able to reach your aim with these objectives, and they need to be SMART. One more thing that's worth planning now is sorting out your outline or structure of your report. Again, if you open any sort of report, any kind of report, you will see that they usually start with an introduction. Sometimes they have an abstract. We'll talk about abstract later on. You don't have to know it now, but you should know what an introduction is. And then it usually should end with a conclusion. And in the beginning, there are certain things that you need to discuss before reaching the conclusion. So a really good example is from the exemplar on how he divided his report. So this is bound to change. So whatever you end up with now, you might have to change later on. So what I want you to do is just to show me your current outline, and you might change it later on. So if you do change it, you can add it to the production log, the old and the new. Just be careful with the production log. Just put the dates for everything that you do. Keep track of everything that you're doing and when you're doing it. So for the outline, the example is, so the introduction is you just describing what it is that you're about to be discussing, basically. More on that later on, don't worry. And then the first part is you discussing the first argument. So for me, discussing thermal remediation methods. Then section 2 is give arguments for and against using the thermal remediation methods. And then section 3, I give an overview of the second argument, which is the physical remediation methods. And then section 4, I talk about, I give arguments for and against the use of thermal remediation methods. And then the last part is where I conclude The last part is where I conclude which argument is the stronger argument. And that's it. That's what an outline is. Again, the outline is very similar to the objectives. The title is very similar to the aim. So yeah, I suggest that you write a quick outline of the things that you want to say. I just want the objectives for now. But do know that you can add an outline, and I will be requesting that from you later on.